Peace and love. You are now tuned into a Dope Public Health Podcast. I'm your host, Demonte. And as always, this is a safe space where we lead with grace and we're always open to learning. And today I'm joined by another dope guest. I happen to also know this brother. We met way back when in a sports group, just our love for sports and our love for basketball, playing basketball. I'm joined by none other than Joshua Johnson. Man, welcome to the show. Joshua is the creator of the Pardon Me podcast, and we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and join the Dope Health Podcast, man. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, man. So we ran into each other supporting another brother's event, and we both gave each other look like, all right, let's make it happen, bro. Let's make it happen. So definitely a pleasure to have you here. And again, we met just through our mutual friends and our love for sports. And, we ended up playing in a basketball league and all that. And I think one of the things that always stood out about you, you were always just a very welcoming person, and you always wove in that comedy to whatever we're doing, man. So I wanted to first yo, where did the comedy come from? You're always accommodating to people, but where does that side of Josh come from?
Man, I've always I live my life like this, man. I don't take myself too serious. Because you can't take yourself too serious, man. You got to always be open. You got to always be open to get ribbed if you're gonna rib, right? So you always find a way to make life seem just a little bit easier, man. And you realize too, man, laughter is food for the soul, man. And it's
Yeah.
some of the best times and best memories I have, man, especially in our group, in our sports group, man. We won't name it because folks, it's a secret society group, I guess. But
That's right.
we'll let out the call. But
Yes,
it's
sir.
some of my when I've gone through trying times in life, man, or when I just feel down and out, or when we've lost brothers that have been in the group,
Mm-hmm.
um, that laughter just makes you feel better, man. So,
Yeah.
that's just always me, man. Always making people smile, making them feel comfortable. I think maybe that it comes from when I was a kid, man. I never felt comfortable, right? People laughed at me. And it was really tough for me because I was short, super light skinned, growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Short. I mean, I was short all the way through high school, man. I didn't grow until after I graduated high school.
Oh,
So
word.
I'm always thinking of, man, how do I make sure somebody else feels comfortable? Because I don't want anybody ever to feel uncomfortable.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. And and then, from that just sparked, just friendship and brotherhood. And then fast forward, and then boom, I'm dropping this Part of Me podcast. And the cool thing is I'm one of those people that when you meet good people are just good people.
No
I had
doubt.
no idea of your background, any of those things. But it's when I saw that you were dropping this, I was like, this is amazing, first of all. And to back up a little bit, in July of 2022, you received a full unconditional pardon, correct? So if you
Yep.
could just talk to me a little bit about what that means, to the average listener, and then what made you go from that pardon to then creating this entire entity, Pardon Me.
Yeah, so I received that. It's the full unconditional governor's pardon here in Wisconsin. So Governor Evers granted that pardon. So the process, I'll real quickly touch on the process, right?
Yes.
You have to be eligible to become eligible. You have to be out of prison or off of supervision for 5 years, and then you can apply to the
Okay.
Pardon Advisory Board, and that takes another 13, 14 months. In total, it took me about 16 months before, so 5 years plus the 16 months before I got the pardon.
Gotcha.
And I've done tons of advocacy, tons of telling my story since I was released from prison in 2004 after serving 10 years. I went to prison at the age of 17, got out at 27, and I've used my opportunity to get in and talk to folks and talk about prison and talk about never going back as much as I possibly could. And when I finally got to this point, for Pardon Me, I received the pardon. On episode 1 of the Pardon Me podcast, for folks that have not checked it out, you can find it on YouTube. I showed a clip where we're on our way back from a family vacation in July
Hmm.
of 2022, and I get the email. Right, it's July 5th. I got the
Wow.
email on July 5th that I received the pardon. But it was after that, in conversations with my wife, and I was
Hmm.
like, you know, I think that there's an opportunity here. There's no lane for people to tell their stories after they received a pardon. Right?
Mm.
Many times, many of us have been highly successful leading up to that, but there's no lane to tell that story. So from that, I was trying to figure out, like, what can I brand what I'm doing, right? I started a company way back, like almost 20 years ago, called Reaching Back and Reaching Out, right? And
Okay.
back then, reentry was not as sexy as it is now. It's super sexy now, but I
That's
couldn't
a
think
fact.
of like a name. So honestly, I don't remember. I just don't remember. We were sitting down and I was like, "Pardon me," and it's a double entendre, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pardon me, right? And
Hmm.
it's so it's like it has that impact, and it's like
Yeah,
pardon me. So the now what we're doing, as we've told stories, we're actually evolving the Pardon Me brand and starting to lean into some advocacy opportunities. How do we utilize this platform that I have and the followers that I currently have for it? How do we utilize that to also now help advocate to change the laws and policies around pardons? So you
yeah.
think about me, I was out, so I got out in 2004. I had to stay on supervision until 2015. So 10
Okay.
additional years. I had 20 years. Then I had to wait 5 years to even apply for a
Gotcha.
pardon, right? So now think about this. 2020, I was
Right.
finally eligible to apply for a pardon. Let's take some steps back. 2019, I became the state director of the Wisconsin apprenticeship system. I ran the
Hmm.
whole state of Wisconsin's apprenticeship system. 2016, I became a career executive in state government as basically the number two, but overall of registered apprenticeship in the state. I was a career executive in the state government that I was
Yeah.
incarcerated in, right? 2016, right? So let's continue to keep going back.
Yes.
Before that, I was serving, I was working out, I was a field rep for apprenticeship. So I was out in the community building apprenticeship programs. Prior to that, I had a very successful career as a construction craft laborer. I served an apprenticeship program here in Wisconsin. Then I was a journey worker. Within, I got out in '04,
Yeah.
12 years, within those 12 years that I was still on parole, or I mean, still on supervision, I became a career executive. But even at that point in 2016, I still was not eligible to apply for a pardon.
For a
No matter
pardon.
how high my achievements were, I was not eligible until my supervision was done and 5 years after that supervision was done. So
Wow.
thinking about, like, for me, when we come up with the brand, when we sat and talked about it, it really is an opportunity for us to highlight the success, because most of us, by the time we received a pardon, were highly successful. And it boils
Mm.
to the question that me and my wife have had a conversation about, which was like, does it even really matter? Like, what if you don't get it? And you really have to do some deep diving and thinking and saying, it
Oh,
matters because I want to close that chapter. But if I don't get it, it's not going to change what I'm doing. I'm already highly successful in the work that I'm doing.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been a great journey, a great path. I always look back. I rock my shirt, man. I rock the brand. That's me. That's me at
Yeah.
like 19 years old, man. So
Yeah.
it's crazy to think that the journey has come from this to
Hmm.
now where I'm at. Being highly respected as a national apprenticeship expert, being highly respected in the lane of justice impacted folks by sharing my story of perseverance and resilience.
And like, and to do that, I mean, what was some of the feedback like when you were beginning to put it out there? Did you receive any resistance when you were kind of, now you have the idea of pardon me and it's starting to kind of come together? What kind of resistance did you encounter?
To be honest with you, I haven't faced resistance. I've more faced me dedicating the time needed to build a brand. People
That's
love it.
powerful.
They love. So I always think about, so we have 6 episodes out. Episode 1 has the absolute most views. And when I say absolute most, right, we're talking a couple hundred views, right? Once again, that dedicating that time. That was my story. The challenge that I faced was how do the individuals want to hear my story? I'm dynamic, right? I build these relationships and have conversations. How do I also now parlay that to say they want to hear other people's story as well? So we
Yeah.
haven't received pushback on it. It's just more the time, the dedicating the time to really build that brand. A lot of people welcome it because they love to know, like, they're walking amongst individuals who've been to prison and who have been highly successful after they've gotten out of prison and have led highly successful lives, whether it's in their careers or in their families. But they would have no clue because most people don't talk about it. They don't talk about
Yeah.
being in prison, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out is how we can kind of serve that purpose of telling these stories with the goal of humanizing individuals who've been to prison. So we haven't received pushback per se. I would
Hmm.
say it's just been more of really understanding that lane and really understanding what we're doing outside of sharing my personal story.
Yeah. And with that, it's power because you're you've made your brand now it's bigger than yourself. Like you're making it about, the entire process and what that means. So then like going back to that, like I mean, what are some of the things that have to even go into that process? I remember, just because you and we go back and I think people have to kind of contribute different offerings, speaking to your character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just seeing that, I'll be honest, seeing that was like very emotional because I'm like, I've just always known you as a good guy. And it was just like, and we've just always, and for me, it's like, it's like, it's just, it is what it is. Like we've already built it. We are who we are. But then I looked at that as almost like your victory lap. You just giving kudos back to those people that kind of helped you
Mm-hmm.
throughout this journey. Talk to me a little bit about that moment because to me that was a very surreal moment. Like if anybody deserves to be shining in this light, this brother deserves this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Part of that was and the 27 toasts, right? So what I did is it took 27 years from when I went to prison to the day I received my pardon. Right? It was
Mm,
27 years. So what I did is I did 27 toasts, and
wow.
what I dedicated those toasts. Each toast was to somebody special along that journey, whether they were a mentor, a friend, my family. Giving those toasts because they've believed in me for 27 years. At some whether it was for 2 days out of that 27 or
Yeah.
my parents and my sister, right? My family who believed in me for 27 of those 27 years. So what I wanted to do was to give kind of pay homage back, but
Yeah.
also highlight what that looks like. One of the toasts I did was with police officers that I know. Many of them that you know me, we know together, police
Hmm.
officers who have always believed in me, who've always stepped up and were like they went to battle anything, what no matter what it is, to say no, this guy is great. This is the
Right.
things he's doing right. He deserves whatever he has coming. And part of when I did that toast with the police officers, what I said in the post that I wrote was when police officers become police officers, they don't become police officers to go throw people in jail. They
Hmm.
become police officers because they want to be a change in their community. And
Right.
I represent what that change looks like when given a second chance. So utilizing that, those 27 toasts to really tell the story of support that I've had because the process is deep, bro. It's deep as in
Yeah.
you have to fill out these you have to fill out this paperwork, and within this paperwork they ask you like, why do you want to pardon?
Hmm.
Hardest question in the world to answer because for many people they really don't know why they want a pardon. They just want a pardon. So
Yeah.
it's really tough to know like I want it because of this unless you're specific like me. I want it because I want to run in elections. I may want to run in local elections like I did this past year. I want to run in national elections. I want to
Hmm.
be able to be a presidential appointee in somebody's administration over something. I want to be able to do that, and I can't do that with this felony conviction
Yeah.
hanging
That
over my
block.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me trying to craft it, and shout out to Max, Max L, he helped me craft it. I threw all my thoughts on a piece of paper,
Hmm.
sent it to Max, and Max made sense out of what I wrote.
Man,
Because for me,
salute. Yeah.
it's emotional, right? So when I'm writing it, it's just from the emotional standpoint. It's not from the rational standpoint. And he helped connect those dots. So thinking about what that process looked like. Now you submit that paperwork. The other most important part of that process is getting people to vouch for your character. You
Mm.
have to have individuals who say, I've worked with Josh, or I know Josh. I submitted 10 letters.
Yeah.
So submitted letters, man, from Cassandra Liable, who was a captain on the police force, right? She captain of the
Yeah.
Milwaukee Police Department. She puts together a recommendation letter for me and for the Pardon Advisory Board.
That's
Like, just
powerful.
think about the dynamic that has to be there for somebody who's achieved such a high level in their career to say, boom, stamp of approval. I think you deserve this. And
Yeah.
as well as others like my mentor, Leah Collins Warchek, as all the way down to the CEO of the company that I work for now. When I sent her an email the night before, and she's like, "I got it," and she sent it the day before I went, or the front of the Pardon Advisory Board. So the
Mm-hmm.
process is, I don't want to use the word arduous because that scares people away. The process is what it is, but it helps when you understand and have everything in place, because then it's, this is why I want to pardon. Here's what I've done to earn a pardon. Right? I tell
Yeah.
people, get rid of the word deserve, because so many people are like, I deserve this. You don't deserve anything. You committed a crime
Mm. That's
in the
powerful.
day. We don't deserve anything. We have to earn everything that we get. Right? That's
Gotcha.
that's that's the way of making sure. Now, deep down, we can definitely say, yeah, I deserve this. I busted my butt. But the moment we think like that and outwardly think like that, others
Yes.
view that as arrogance, or you rob people, you
Entitlement.
violently rob people. So I
Word.
flip it and say, this is what I earned. I worked my butt off to earn this opportunity to sit in front of you all and tell you how great I am and what I've done to earn this
Yeah.
pardon. Most importantly, what am I going to do after I get this pardon to make sure other individuals can identify how to earn this opportunity as well?
Yeah. And then, I don't want to gloss over your success, your career success. So, you know, despite, the obstacles you faced, when it comes to, I have an idea of where I want to go personally slash professionally, you did it. What's some of the drive behind that? Because when you talked about that pursuit, like you sprinted through that, I'm like, hold up, brother, let's back up a little bit. Like you, this on top of this on top of this to be as successful as you are.
Mhm.
And, I'm around a lot of young men. I remember talking to a young man about a little bit over a month ago. And he was going through some things and he was like, I was like, I have somebody you need to meet. I have somebody you need to meet because people need to see more folks like you to be so driven to be where you are. So like what's some of the reasons, some of the why behind your drive that made you so successful?
I'll take it back. I worked in construction, right there.
Okay.
Man, this is a whole nother story that I could talk about, like how I got into construction. Shout out to Jay Titus, very good friend of mine. I know he'll listen to this, but he's the main factor of how I
Okay.
got into construction in that whole process. And if other people have heard my story, they've heard, how Jay helped make that happen by taking a chance on somebody who's been to prison.
Word.
But what happened is, when I left construction, so I worked here in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, then I went to Chicago and worked, and then my youngest son was born. And at that time I was like, I don't want to do this working. I don't want to work 80 to 90 hours a week. I want to be different than my father was. My father, while he was loving, he worked. That's what he did, right? And I didn't
Yeah.
want to do that. I wanted to be able to have time to take my kids to sports, and to be there for them. So I left, raised him for 2 years, while at the time his mother was finishing college. So I raised him for 2 years as a stay at home dad. Then I was like, I got to do something. Like, I can't do same. I'm not built for this stay at home stuff. So then I went into
Okay.
state government. And once I got into state government, I started Invoke Rehab, where I was helping individuals with disabilities get connected to employment and helping employers understand the untapped talent pool of individuals that they were totally ignoring, and totally not seeing the value of. And from that, I ended up doing a presentation for the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards at the time, talking
Okay.
about how to engage, how to get individuals with disabilities or different abilities into apprenticeships, because I served in apprenticeship. I said, this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
So I did a presentation, blew them away. Her name was Kathy Wellington. She was the section chief at the time, and Karen Morgan was the director. blew them away, and they said, we got to figure out how to get this guy working with us. So
Oh.
I applied for a job as a field rep, and get this, I was the second
Hmm.
choice for that job. Now,
Really?
now, as I continue to tell this story, think about that. I was the second choice
Okay.
because of the lack of experience, or what, I forgot what reason, but I was the second choice. I become a field rep. The guy turns it down, so I become a field rep. That was in 2014. By 2016, I moved now into that middle management position as the section chief of
Hmm.
field operations for all of Register Apprenticeship. 2019, I'm the state director of the Wisconsin Apprenticeship System. 2020, I'm the vice president of our national organization, or National Association of State and Territorial Apprenticeship Directors, which means I represented as the VP 32 states across the country. And I was
Yeah.
voted into that position by my peers, my fellow state directors, to become the president in 2021 or 2022,
Hmm.
when the president that was in was retiring. As I went through, there were points in there that were like those, like, ooh, let's try this. But there
Yeah.
was one point in there that stands out the most, between the conversation I had with my mentor, Leah Collins Warchek, who I totally pay homage to, all the way to my conversations I had with Karen Morgan. Shout out to Karen Morgan, the former state director, my predecessor, when I was here in Wisconsin. Between those conversations that I had, from Leah giving me a chance when no one else would, coming into state government, to Karen saying, I knew you wanted this job from the moment I hired you. There was one conversation I had was with Reggie Newsom, who was the secretary of the Department of Workforce Development at the time. I set up a lunch meeting with him. I drove to Madison. I was like, man, let's have lunch. He came to an event I did. I put on this event honoring employers. I got like 50 employers to attend, and it was just great.
Hmm.
Man, he was blown away, right? And he came. He's like, man, this is really good work. So I said, let me get a lunch deal. Let me get a lunch meeting with you.
Yeah.
So he's like, cool, come up to Madison. I drove to Madison. We sat there, we were eating. I think he got like a soup or something. I actually got a meal, right? This is before I learned, when you have those meetings, it's not about the food, right? I learned that.
Mm.
Eventually, I learned, like, no, it ain't about the food,
That's
bro.
a
You,
gem. That's a gem. That's a
you might
gem.
not finish this food, because the conversations that you having, this food gonna get cold if they're good enough. If you finish this food, you're not having good conversation.
Gotcha.
So he asked me one question that
Hmm.
changed my life, because I was coming to him basically saying, what can you do for me?
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, what do you want to do?
Wow.
I didn't know. I was like, I don't know. I just want to be successful. He said, when you figure out what it is that you want to do, you come to me and I'll start making the connections you need.
Word.
I remember I drove home, and me and my wife, we weren't married at the time. And I told her, I was like, man, I met with Reggie and he messed me up. Like, he threw me a curveball. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
So from that moment forward, I determined I want to be successful and I want to lean into the work I'm doing,
Yeah.
which then gave me an opportunity to go work in apprenticeship. And once I got in there, I said, I want to change the way people think about apprenticeship. And many of the policies still today
Hmm.
that are in place, many of the practices in place today, are from when I became a career executive in 2016. Because I
Wow.
said, this is what I want to do to help my community to be successful in apprenticeship. I didn't
Yeah.
know about apprenticeship when I was messing up in high school. Many of these other youth that we have don't know about these opportunities, or if they know about it, it's sold as an alternative to college. So it's looked at
Yes.
less than. So I wanted
Yes.
to make sure that our community had exposure and access to those opportunities that existed. Many of those practices still stand today in Wisconsin apprenticeship on how the work is done, because Reggie's conversation, which is, what do you want to do? And I
Wow.
said, eventually I became to realization, I want to make an impact. And
Yeah.
what do I need to do to make that impact? So also there's that conversation there of, when you get out of prison, you can stay boots on the ground, which there's so many soldiers out there right now. And there's so many soldiers out there right now that are boots on the ground, that are doing that daily grind work. that are in the mud of helping people grow after they've been to prison. But there's also soldiers out there who said, this isn't my ministry in the mud. My ministry is in the lobby, talking to lobbyists, talking to the
Gotcha.
policymakers, talking to those lawmakers. That's my ministry. So you have an opportunity to elevate to get to a point where you can influence and affect change. It's exactly what I did when I became a career executive. I utilized my platform of being a career executive and creating policy to create opportunities within the Department of Corrections for registered apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I resurrected a registered apprenticeship program that was in Department of Corrections, and I totally added on to the opportunities and making sure there were connections to individuals prior to their release to the workforce when they got out. When Department of Corrections here in Wisconsin said, we'd love to continue to do this work, but we don't have a position, hold my beer, I got you. I wrote them into a $9 million grant that we received here, the most ever in the state of Wisconsin,
Yeah.
federal grant, a $9 million grant. I wrote a position into that grant to work inside the prison, work with DOC to help connect individuals prior to their release and to get them connected to the workforce in apprenticeship. So
Yeah.
I took that opportunity from that meeting with Reggie to say, I'm going to create impact, but I don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to build as many relationships as I possibly can. And then I started to see the social capital I was building
Gotcha.
that was starting to dictate what it is I actually wanted to do because
Hmm.
now I was getting connected. And before, when I thought I had this scarlet letter on my head and I had these guardrails, my
Hmm.
social capital I was building let me know you don't have any guardrails. Whatever it is you want to do, brother, you're going to do it. And we're
Yeah.
going to help you however we can. So, as we talk about kind of skipping through, right, that 20 years since I've been out,
Yes.
it's while I hit fast forward, there's some really intentional moments in there that have been a part
Very.
of the success that I've had. Where now in the role I'm in now, I'm at a national nonprofit called Jobs for the Future, where I am a recognized national apprenticeship expert leading opportunities and being a part of work like that is tremendously important to any and all underrepresented and disenfranchised communities. Still making sure, even at this national level, that we're exposing those underrepresented, disenfranchised individuals to the opportunities that exist, to the promise of apprenticeship. Because I firmly believe that
Hmm.
apprenticeship has the power to eradicate poverty. And that's when I started to build, when I started to say what I wanted to do, that is what I leaned into as my platform. I have
Yeah.
these two platforms, right? The Pardon Me, like Justice Impacted, but I also have Workforce. And you have to have workforce, you have to have opportunities for individuals to be successful prior or once they're released from prison.
Yeah. I mean, you are a walking example of systemic change gone right. Oftentimes, you know, I, my studies have taught me there's systemic oppression and there's structural violence and there's all of these different things that like you said, this policy here, boom, I'm going to write this in this $9 million grant. Um, Talk to me about just the power of systemic change because oftentimes people that look like us don't believe that it can happen, but here in fact it did happen. So like what are
Mm.
some of the different things that you can speak to people that like are also like I want to create change on a level like this, but I don't know. What would you say to those folks?
So the number one thing I say is stop thinking about today and think about the future. Many
Mm,
times when we're trying to create change, we're thinking about what we can do different today. Well, guess what? The sun is going to go down today and tomorrow's going to come. Guaranteed. No matter
yeah.
what, no matter if I don't wake up tomorrow, tomorrow's still coming. So we have to start thinking about the future. What does the future look like? How can we start to create change that'll have some residual effect now, but will really have impact in the future? It's like when I used to tell employers when I would go meet with them talking about apprenticeship, the best time to start an apprenticeship was 5 years ago. But let's
Word.
get have a conversation today. Right. So
Ah,
thinking about it in that way,
yeah.
same thing with apprenticeship with exposure. I put together a campaign here in Milwaukee. I put together a campaign where in the hood, in the impoverished black and brown neighborhoods, there were billboards talking about apprenticeship. And I remember I got challenged by that. And people would say, why would you put it into the impoverished neighborhoods? when they're just trying to figure out how to live for day, right? Well, I'm like, I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood, and if I can't see something, how
Yeah.
can I ever be it? So they were already thinking, well, we're going to spend, whatever, $100,000 to put billboards up and bus wraps and bus shelters and all this. It better turn out apprentices right away. It's not. It's not
Yeah.
going to. But guess what it will do? If you continue to expose,
Yes, sir.
the next step is engage.
Yes,
If you're not
sir.
exposed, how can you ever engage? If I don't know this exists and I don't know if this opportunity exists for me, I'm not going to engage. So
That's
it's
a fact.
getting people to understand that. Stop thinking about today. Today is very important, but today just starts the conversation for the future. So
Yeah.
always have an eye on the future. So when you're thinking about policy, when you're thinking about how to create that systemic change, it starts with a conversation today, but it ends with looking at what this looks like in the future. And it's going to take time. It takes time. Things don't happen overnight, especially when you're talking policy or systemic. You're talking about breaking hundreds of
Yeah.
years of
Yes,
systemic
sir.
racism in our country,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just let's just bring it down to the apprenticeship conversation. We're
Yeah.
talking about ending almost 50 years of this conversation around the only way to be successful is to go to college.
Yeah.
That's it, right? That's back from the everybody should go to college age. I think that was the Reagan days. So we're
Mm-hmm.
just talking about just that little step, that little snippet.
Just right there.
Yeah, everybody believes you have to go to college to be successful, that going and working in construction or going into manufacturing or going into IT or going into healthcare, all these different areas that apprenticeship offers, you're trying to dismantle and change the mentality that apprenticeship is this second class citizen program. I always used to say this, Tay, I always said, man, and I said this, there's news clips of me saying this
Mm-hmm.
at graduations of apprentices or when they're signing their contract. I would say we celebrate these youth when they go to college. We
Yep.
celebrate them when they play sports in college. We celebrate them when they go to the military. But we never celebrate these youth when they exit high school and they enter into the workforce.
That's a fact.
So many people are short sighted. They don't see the value. But what's one thing we got to do, even if we go to college? What's one thing we got to do?
Still gotta
We,
work.
we still got to work. We still got to work. So at the end
Still
of the
gotta work.
day, we still getting to that same end.
Yeah.
Some people just take the road differently. They take the road that is appropriate for them
Yeah.
based on the information that they have access to. So when I put billboards in the hood, it's because I want my black and brown folks in the hood to
Yeah.
be exposed to the opportunities so they can make informed decisions when it comes to their life after high school or life after prison or their life when an underemployed job that they're at.
And I
Man,
think
don't get me
that's
going, man. You know I get
But no,
going.
see, but this is where the power is because I remember exposing, young adults to it, and for some people it's still too good to be true. And you're looking at this on a national scale, but then your heart and passion, you're always tied to us here in the city of Milwaukee. But with that, what are some of the opportunities that you see when, like, because Wisconsin highest incarceration rates, especially for African American men, right, in the country. And then in addition to that, Milwaukee is often listed up there as one of the most impoverished cities. So, like, apprenticeship, you're saying this is a pathway to alleviate poverty. This is a pathway to, so maybe some of the folks are like, okay, well, I've heard about that, or I know somebody that maybe could benefit from this because they're really, what road would they take to just begin to explore, okay, I hear about this apprenticeship stuff, how do I even get connected to it, where do I go?
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges, to be honest with you. I'll play back a conversation I had with James Graham. You know JG as
Yes,
well.
sir.
He was one of the people that I consulted when I was considering leaving as the state director to move into this national position. He was one of the
Okay.
few people I consulted. And because he's been in the trades for almost 30 years. Actually, yes,
Yeah.
it has been 30 years. And on many job sites, he was the only black man on the job, right? So we've had
Yep.
these conversations,
Yep.
and I said, if I really want to get someone to be 100% honest with me about my thoughts, I'm gonna call James. So we
Yep.
had a conversation, man. I remember I was driving down Fond du Lac. I think I was coming from getting a haircut, and I was driving down Fond du Lac, and I called him, and I said, "Man, James, I'm toiling, man. I'm toiling with this opportunity to leave the state and work on a national level. I've done so much impact here in the state. I've done great work in the state, right? Bringing exposure and conversations.
Yeah.
And I feel like I finally started to take these conversations to a different level in our state. And now here I am. I'm just going to up and leave. So it was very hard for me because I felt
Mm,
leaving my community behind.
yeah.
James said something to me that totally changed our conversation. He said, Milwaukee is one city within one state of 50 states. You can create impact here on a national level. How many more cities like Milwaukee can you create impact in?
Wow.
And that conversation really, it basically, like, I took off that, okay, like I was torn. I was torn
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was creating impact, and I made it in the city, and here I am. I'm out.
Yeah.
And he said, you got to think about those other 50 states and those other black and brown folks in those other 50 states who can
Yeah.
benefit from the opportunities that you can show. So when you think about what does that look like in your state, many times it's as easy as a Google search apprenticeship. You can Google search the state you're living in, no matter where you're watching this at, state or territory,
Yeah.
and say, if you're living in Georgia, Georgia apprenticeship, and it's going to pull up who you should contact.
There you
Here it's
go.
Wisconsin apprenticeship, and it's going to take you to a website, which then gives you all the information. Which the website, by the way, I always got to give a shout out. That website looks the way it does because of things I put in place a few years ago.
Word up.
We're really building it to be an informative website and not a government website. So most across the country now have informative websites.
That's
So
powerful.
just going in and just putting in the word, the state you're in, and apprenticeship can start to send you down that rabbit hole of information. And don't be afraid to call and ask, like, this is what I want to do. For kids, for youth, man, the most powerful thing you do is talk to your counselor. You go to
Yeah.
that counselor and say, college, I did college, but I don't think I'm ready for college right now. I want to go into the workforce.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about apprenticeship? And if they can't tell you anything, then you set a meeting with them a week later and say, I want to come back in a week and I need you to tell me what I need to know about getting into an apprenticeship in this state.
That's
And you make
powerful.
them, that's their job.
That's
Their job is
advocacy.
to help you.
Yeah.
So if they don't know the information, you take a hold of your own life and say, I'll be back in a week. I'll be looking for some information in a week when we come back up in here. Right. I
Yeah.
know, I know I probably when I was 16, 17, I probably didn't have that. I've empowered my kids to have that. Like, nope, I'm going to hold you accountable. This is your job. You're going to help me do this.
Yeah.
Um, but it's easy as just putting in the state you're in and put the word apprenticeship in there. And you can start to then dive down and find out what it is. And to realize that apprenticeship is much more than construction and manufacturing. Those may be the highest occupational area or highest industries
Okay.
that have the most apprentices across the country. But I'm telling you, there is a boom in the ITs, the cybersecurities, healthcare, teacher apprenticeship. Like there's a boom across the country because
Yeah.
apprenticeship at the end of the day, Tay, is all it is
Yeah.
is a structured outline, a training outline.
It's
It's
an
not a
internship.
program. Yeah, it's you're it people think about apprenticeship. Think about apprenticeship in the same line as an internship,
Yep.
except an apprenticeship is 100% fully paid. An apprenticeship is 100% full employment. You are full-time employed at that organization. And number three, everything you're learning in that apprenticeship is directly relevant to the job, to the career that you're seeking.
Yeah.
So
It's
you're
not
not,
it's not ambiguous learning. It's no,
yes, not
this is directly for this. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not working in an office in an internship and you know what? We don't have anything to do for you today. Go ahead and cut the grass. Or you know what? Hey,
Right.
go ahead and haul in some paper, unload a truck. No, when you're in an apprenticeship, everything you're doing is for that career that you're entering. Every moment of the day, every breath you take while you're at work or at school is towards that work, that career that you're going for. So
Yeah.
thinking about it in that way of like, this is a great opportunity for me to expand and this is a great opportunity for me to grow. And it is college. Apprenticeship is college. Many apprenticeships across the country, there's a component. There's what we call the 90-10, right? And sometimes it's 80-20. It just all
Mm-hmm.
depends what the program is. But there's the large majority of the apprenticeship is on the job training, which means I'm going to work every day. I'm working, doing it. But then
Yep.
there's other small percentage, which is called related training instruction. That's school. Most
Yep.
of that school is delivered, guess where? Colleges. Whether
On
it's
a
a
college
community college,
campus.
a technical college, there's four-year
Yeah.
universities that are offering it. There's HBCUs that are offering it now, right? There's HSIs that are offering it, and so on and so forth. It's delivered at a college. And many of them have it built in that in this apprenticeship program, you gain credits towards an associate's degree. College. Here in Wisconsin, you
It's
get
fire.
39 credits towards an associate degree. So
That's
you
amazing.
already have the opportunity. So when people say apprenticeship is in college, it's foolish because it is.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way, and I'm going to segue this into apprenticeship is a great way for people like me who never went to, I've never stepped foot on a college campus as a student. Never
Mm-hmm.
have. And I honestly don't have, I don't ever want to. I just don't. I served my apprenticeship and I've used this, right? And that's no
Yeah.
disrespect to individuals who've been to college, who've paved the way and who've done great things in college. Everybody has a different ministry and they've done their thing, right? They did what they need to do. But when you think about individuals who've been incarcerated,
Yeah.
the number one thing they need when they get out is stability. And the number one way to get stability many times is employment.
Yes.
Apprenticeship is the only workforce program in this country that you can walk into with zero knowledge. I didn't know how to build a highway. I just got out of prison after 10 years. But when I walked out of that apprenticeship, I was
Mm-hmm.
highly skilled in that occupation. So when we think about how to create that systemic change, I've
Yeah.
used my ability and whether it was as the state director or whether it's now as an apprenticeship expert or as an apprentice or somebody who's been in prison, I made a cross. I brought them all the way across and I said, let's make sure that these men and women, these individuals are getting access to these opportunities prior to their release from prison so that when
Yeah.
they get out, they have the stability they need and they're into a career that they want to go into. Because getting out of prison doesn't mean that you have to work at fast food the rest of your life. Getting out of prison doesn't mean you have to work at an entry level job at a manufacturing. Notice I highlighted entry level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting out of prison doesn't mean you have to go work for a staffing agency. There's opportunities that when you get out of prison, you can go directly into a career that you found interest in sitting in prison and thinking about what you want to do. But we have to get rid of this notion that when we get out of prison that we're less than. And that's where, pardon me, that's the lane that I'm
Yes.
really trying to drive us to is humanizing individuals who've been in prison. I don't know if you've seen my reels that I put out there that there was a voiceover that the community, Shannon Ross at the community did a voice. They interviewed me,
Yes.
and I was able to extract the audio and I put it over a voiceover or over slides because everyone says what they think somebody in prison looks like. What does that look like? This is what it looks like. This is what they think. That's what
Mm-hmm.
they think. Everyone that's been to prison, everyone that's in prison, that's what they look like. But it's not. There's CEOs of companies. There's people who have their doctorate degrees. There's nationally recognized experts. There's individuals out there wearing suits and ties every day that have been in prison, that sat in a prison cell. There's
Yeah.
people out there that are right now working on a road, building a road that have been to prison. There's people out there that are running manufacturing lines that have been to prison. There are people out there in healthcare that have been to prison. There are people out there in cybersecurity that have been to prison. So we have to get rid of this notion that when you go to prison, you're doomed for the rest of your life.
That's
So
powerful.
when you asked me about that 20 years of where I ran,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I tie it all together, which is I wasn't going to be just somebody who gave up on life after spending like 10 years in prison, after being in prison from the age of 17 to 27. I still had goals and dreams. Now, my goal before I went to prison was to play professional baseball. Now, at 27, I ain't going to be able to do that, right? That
Word.
wasn't
I
my
feel you.
ministry at that point, right?
Right.
But I found something that I could lean into and to create impact. And that impact started day by day, but looking to the future and saying, this is where I hope that
Yeah.
one day when I leave this earth, that legacy, that dash that they talk about between when you're born and when you die. I
Mm-hmm.
want that dash to be so full of the legacy of me having the visionary foresight to say we have to create these opportunities and we can eradicate poverty, we can end the recidivism rate, we can close prisons, we can really make sure that individuals are properly prepared before they're released from prison instead of just dropping them off at the bus. It's hypothetical, but dropping them off at the bus stop with a $25 check. We,
Yeah.
me, can be part of that change. So that's
Yeah.
where I've really leaned into that work.
And I can definitely say, I mean, the work is definitely speaking for itself. I mean, and the reality is, I love to be able to have you say what you're saying because a lot of times you're just doing the work. You're so adamant about doing the work. Sometimes you don't stop and smell the roses because you're so driven, you're so focused. And this is why I love this platform because you've been able to come on here and say, no, this is possible. That's not true. Let's reframe this and look at this a different way. And I think what you're doing, you're just empowering people, whether they've experienced something similar or somebody that they love have
Yes.
experienced something similar. It's like, wait, I listened to that show and now I can go to his show and really learn a whole bunch and then like go ahead and put my hat in the race. Let me go ahead and try to explore this apprenticeship thing. So excuse
Yeah.
me, that's just extremely powerful. So I want to thank you for doing what you do. It does not go unnoticed. And it's one of those things too, like when you're watching one of your favorite sports teams play, seeing somebody that you know doing this work on a national scale is also powerful because you don't let that notoriety get to your head. You're
Nah.
always open to collaboration, and I think that's something also that's highly understated. You're looking to make connections to create change. You're not looking to make connections to flick it up. Um,
Correct.
Talk about that intentionality. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna let you off the hook with that because I know you know what I'm saying.
you know, man, I view it like this. Every moment, every minute I have on this earth of breathing, I have a minute and a moment to affect change.
Word.
And any opportunity I get, no matter who it is, man, I'm going up, hey, I appreciate the work you do. Let's take a selfie. The idea behind that is number one, individuals who've been to prison could never fathom having the opportunity
Mm,
to take a picture, let alone have a conversation with some of these folks.
yeah.
They've been to prison for non-violent crimes. I went to prison for violent armed robberies on the east side of Milwaukee. If I can take a picture with these dynamic folks,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're celebrities, whether they're presidential appointees, whether they're just the average everyday Joe that's doing great work, then
Mm-hmm.
you can too. I always think about those
Yeah.
opportunities of engagement as the opportunity for me to start or to continue building my social capital. We chopped it up a little bit about this before we came on air, which
Yeah.
is the number one thing that we know in our communities, right? And I'm being hypothetical here. So I hope the listeners don't like, oh, that ain't the only thing we can look for. Hypothetically speaking, right? You come back on the block after
Yeah.
being in the penitentiary, man, who got the best weed? I need some
Yep.
weed, right? They'll be like, oh man, so got it. But I want to make it when you come back on that block that you say, who has opportunity for me to get a career?
Yeah.
Who has opportunity for me to take care of my family, that I can get a family sustaining career, that I can raise my family that I may have left behind when I was in prison?
That's real.
But we can't do that without the social capital that we gain by putting ourselves out there. My old boss, Eric Selzenau, he said to me one day, we were walking to dinner in DC, and he said,
Okay.
say, kid, like he's my dad's age, right? Super cool guy. He worked in the Obama administration. He said, why do you always just tell people you've been to prison? Like, do you ever worry about sharing your information? Like, you're really like open about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, man, I'm gonna be honest with you, Eric. If I tell you I've been to prison and I let you know that I have, I take all that power away from you of trying to judge me because I've been to prison.
Wow.
The second part of that is if I talk about it, I can make others feel comfortable talking about it. Now we can have an
Mm.
open dialogue. And this is the Dope Health Podcast. One of the
Yeah.
biggest things in our Black community is we don't talk about the problems we have, whether it's health, whether it's mental, or whether it's the stress, right? Whether
That's
it's
correct.
diagnosed with disability. We don't talk about
Yeah.
those things in our community,
That's
which
a
means they
fact.
go undiagnosed, which means they go untreated, which then they manifest themselves into whatever they're going to become. So if
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about being in prison for 10 years, and I can make someone else feel comfortable, we can start to now create this wave of comfortability of talking about the experiences we had in prison, which then will serve two purposes. One,
Mm-hmm.
it humanizes us and it lets everyone know that just because they've been to prison doesn't mean they're a loser the rest of their life. But two, those experiences now become the truths that our youth hear instead of the truths that they heard from their uncle who talked
Yes.
about prison. Our
Yes.
truths are now what the youth hear, which is like, yeah, I tell my kids, prison wasn't physical in Wisconsin, it was mental. When my parents come to visit me, they drove an hour and a half, 2 hours to come visit me. And when
Mm-hmm.
they left, I had to worry about them getting in a car accident and dying, and I'd never see them again. That's mental stress
Yeah.
because I couldn't call them. I couldn't hit them up on my cell phone and be like, "Oh,
Let me
y'all
know
made it
when you get
home."
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was the next day, whenever it was that I got a chance to call. If it wasn't that next day, whenever it was. So it's
Right.
the mental part of it. The mental part of being told what to do by people who have no interest or care about what happens to you in this world. So we have the opportunity to create that truths for the youth and for individuals out there that are living though that are at risk, whether they're youth or grown-ups. We have that ability to create the real truths, which is
Yeah.
we may have messed up, but let us tell you a little bit about what prison was about so that we can use it as a deterrent. We've seen it all, right? Scared straight, that don't work,
I
man.
was, yeah, yeah,
Listen,
exactly.
at
Thank you.
17, at
Thank
17,
you.
man, look, when I went to prison, it was kill or be killed. Man, I walked in there with the toughest me mug on my face, and I wasn't gonna do nothing to nobody. But it would you weren't gonna scare me, right? There
Right.
was no fear. I just got done robbing people, telling people I will kill you if you don't give me the money you have. So scared straight doesn't work.
That's a
Education
fact.
works. Having conversations and diving down and finding out why is this person even at risk? What has put you on this path? And let's diagnose and let's treat that there. So part of that treatment and diagnosis is building social capital, right? Or part of the remedy, the
Yeah,
medicine for
yeah.
that is building social capital. And we've seen some great work here in Milwaukee. We've seen across the country great work with building social capital and putting people in spaces to have those conversations. So when I'm out everywhere I am, 100% to show that there's that if I can do it, so can you. My brother always say this. My brother Dominic, man, he always says, he was like, man, Josh, one thing I realized about you, you always want for others what you have.
Mm.
And that's just how I lived my life, man. And
Wow.
that's to a fault because sometimes people are like, man, that ain't what I want. But I'm like, man, this is what you need, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm taking those pictures, when I'm out, when I'm networking, I'm building a network of social capital that can be undefeated for humanizing individuals that have been to prison. And we
Yeah.
have to be able to do that. If we don't, individuals will continue to believe that they can do nothing and be nothing when they get out of prison, which then just means they're going to go back to prison. So yeah,
Right.
so I love it, man. I enjoy every minute of it, man. Most of the people I meet, we talk a little bit. I'm there on my professional side, so I don't dive into the pardon me side as much unless they become friends of mine on social media and they see it, right? Like on
And
LinkedIn.
yeah.
I use my LinkedIn as professional and both my professional, right? The work I do on this as well as the work I do around apprenticeship. But yeah, it's a great opportunity just to highlight what's possible.
Yeah. And before I let you go, where can people, like, okay, not I might just be put on to pardon me, and I need to check every single episode and I need to find the highlights or whatever. where would you direct folks to come check out Pardon Me?
Man, first and foremost, pardonme22.com. So if you go to my website, you'll find all of my information. If anybody's listening, they're interested in bringing me in as a speaker, no matter what it is. Man, look, I could talk to anybody and encourage and inspire and motivate anybody. Uh, but there's information. My bio is on there. The link to each podcast is on there that I've done, whether it's on YouTube or audio, is on there, as well as just some additional information about who I am and the work that we're doing, but also information about pardons across the country, what the policy is and what that
Wow.
looks like. So pardonme22.com is definitely where everybody can come. That's like the funnel. They can come there. They can email me. They can reach out if they have questions, if they want to be engaged. And, before we go, man, I got to highlight a couple
Yeah.
things, man.
Please do. Please do.
First and foremost, I don't want it to be missed that over my shoulder here, that's my governor's pardon. That's the proclamation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
This where I'm sitting right now is my office
Mm-hmm.
that I work as a national apprenticeship expert from every day. That is in
Man.
my background. I mean, I got some other stuff. I got the Giannis jersey,
Yes,
rock
yes.
Giannis jersey from one of my former staff, Long Vang, who said I lead like Giannis. I don't care, and I just get it done. Over here to a wedding picture. Some of my accolades.
Nice.
My trophies I got over here, like some little stuff that I got.
That's
But in all
real.
seriousness, right over my shoulder in my everyday shot
Yeah.
is one of the most proud moments of my life
Man.
because I made it happen. And I made it happen by doing the work that I did and just doing me and being me. But what's crazy is that looks over my shoulder
Mm-hmm.
as I sip my water or coffee out of my mug I got when I went to the White House. Just saying.
Man. That's real. That's real.
That is who I was.
Mm-hmm.
This represents who I've become.
Man. That
Tying those together for people,
yeah.
that's where change happens. That's where the possibility happens.
Yeah.
Understanding that's who you were, never being ashamed of it, never being afraid to talk about it, because it can lead to who you will become.
Yeah.
So,
The
man,
beauty in that journey, man, just like you said, that's where you were. This is who you become is so powerful, so potent. It's just, and it's reality, it's
100%.
so many. And now you've done this for us here in Milwaukee County. And now for a few years now, I've been doing it on a national scale. And it's like, I like to say this because it's like, yeah, man, it's people out here that are doing the thing for real, for real. Like, and you're one of those people. And I'm also not gonna let you out of here because we share love for hip hop. We share deep love and affection for hip hop. It's one of those genres that, you know, we're always talking about this album, this MC, that MC. So when you get up every single morning to do all of the great work that you do, what's that one song that you're like, you know what? I gotta hear this one. I gotta hear this song. It's in regular rotation. I can't make my week without this song. If you were to be put in that hot seat, give me some. What's in that playlist of yours?
Man, you got me. See, so I got a couple though, right? Because they
That's
have
what I'm like. You can give me a couple.
yeah, they have specific ties, but one of the first ones is Freddie Gibbs, and you'll hear it on my you hear it as part of the opening, the couldn't be done, right?
Mm,
That's
okay.
number one. They say this can't be done. They
Yeah.
say that this is impossible,
Yeah.
that this can happen. The other one is a Public Enemy, so I take it back to now when I was a kid. But the Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos, man,
Yes.
that opening is I got a letter from the government, right?
Government
There's my
the other
letter from the
day.
government,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it's the power of, like, obviously that song is much deeper than somebody getting a pardon, right? It has much more meaning. Um, but then, the last one I want to throw in there, and actually it's not even the last one, it's probably
Okay.
a last group that I is. but it always takes me back to being a kid, man, and getting my license. But it's Outkast. Anything by Outkast, man.
Yeah.
Uh, back in the Southern playlist of Cadillac Funky Music, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything from that album, anything
Yeah.
from there, those are in my regular rotation. Like if you looked at my Apple, in fact, I'm about to open up. Let me see. I'm gonna open up my Apple.
Okay.
If I take a listen now to one of my favorites, let me see here. Where's my favorites at? So I can tell you. Oh, where's my
Mm-hmm.
favorites at? I lost. Oh, there it is. There's my favorites mix. Let's see. Let's see one of the first songs that pop up off there, because that'll let you
Okay.
know who's always popping up in, who's always popping
Yeah.
up in
In
my
the
list,
regular rotation. Yeah.
man. But you got you know, one of my fellow brothers who received a pardon as well, Meek Mill, always
Yeah.
popping up in my regular rotation.
Yeah.
So it really all depends. But I'd say, that one song that really focuses
Yeah.
is Couldn't Be Done. Sit, man,
Oh,
this couldn't be done. People will tell you when you go to prison, that's the end, that you've made your life choice. And that's it. You'll never
yeah.
be anything in life. And I've proven that that is 100% unequivocally false. In
Man.
so
And you
many
do
other
and you do it
facets.
so well. That's real, brother. You do it so well with
I'm
elegance, with
humbled. I
grace,
appreciate that.
and always still being about the community. You never make it about you. And like you said, you took your whole brand and you're making it, for everyone else to kind of keep shedding light on that. So again, you'll be able to check out Pardon Me. I'll make sure I have a link here for everybody. Brother, I just want to thank you for just being on the show. This has been extremely fun. So glad we got to knock it out. And thank you all for listening. This has been another dope episode of a Dope Public Health Podcast with love, respect, and advocacy. Peace.
Peace.
Boom.